Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation back with another broadcast. This time, special guest. We have Mr. Greg Palmer joining us today. Greg, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing super well. Excited to have you here. You've been banging the drum on swimming inside the community for a while. Back in the day, you helped create some workouts for us. You're probably one of the hardest working triathletes I know, no doubt about it, and owner of one of the coolest pain caves ever. Uh, Not because it's super functional. I've seen like the glossy, like Wall Street edition pain cave. Your pain cave is like, this is where it gets done. Like it happens here.
Yeah.
Um, so excited to have you join us today to talk about swimming and sort of swim toys, all the fun stuff.
hmm
Could you give everyone sort of like a quick, breakdown of who you are and your swim
Yeah.
background?
Yeah. Sure. So I'm Greg Palmer. I am a longtime teacher and swim coach. I've been teaching for about 22 years. I used to be a paramedic before I was a teacher, but I've been coaching swimming since I was 17.
Mm.
And Before that, I was teaching swim lessons. My first passion was really teaching people how to swim, and that's a big part of it. My current positions, I am the head coach of Cranbrook, and we are a boarding and day school in Michigan,
Mm.
and we're one of the top Division III teams in the state of Michigan. So I'm the head coach for the girls and the assistant coach for the boys, and then I'm also one of the lead national coaches for BBD, which is the Birmingham Blue Dolphins in the Birmingham Bloomfield area in Michigan. And we are a bronze medal USA club, and we're also one of the top YMCA teams in the nation. Currently, we have about 30, 40 kids qualified for YMCA Nationals. We take a regular contingent of kids to USA sectionals and juniors every year. And so I'm a big part of not only the maintenance of the team, but also the in the background. But I'm also kind of the lead on a couple of different groups within the team as well.
Fantastic. So it's fair to say you probably spend 50% of your time in chlorinated air and 50% not in chlorinated. Is that right?
Yeah. So currently, I'm in my office in the pool right now. Even though I'm a teacher, it's my one quiet spot. It's actually a nice soundproof room. But
Yeah.
yeah, we are at our facility at Cranbrook right now, and we're just kind of actually making some arrangements for winter weather coming in. So a lot of meets going on. We're in the midst of championship season, so pretty much from the end of January all the way through the beginning of April, we have a meet every single weekend.
Okay. Wow. Crazy. That explains why yesterday I saw you did like 5 workouts in a single day. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it challenging as a triathlete. But I'm definitely both a blended like type A and type B person. I want to get my workouts in, but I also
Hmm.
try to figure out how I want to make sure that I'm doing it in the right way. And it's one of those challenges, but it can be done.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it doesn't have, that's a great point. Let's start there because, there's sort of, people consider them to be sort of like opposite poles to be like,
Yeah.
like I do it no matter what, like just get it done, good, ugly, it's done. And the other side is like, well, it's gotta be done right, etc. And to your point, I don't think it's poles on an axis. I think it's a quadrant, where we say like, hey, I want to get my shit done and I want to do it well. And inside Endurance Nation, our goal is to be in that upper right quadrant where we're getting our shit
Yeah.
done, but we're doing it well.
Yeah,
And that.
and I think that a lot of that has to come down to like, and this is something I encourage with my athletes, and probably I would
Mhm.
encourage with other people that are watching and listening is, talk to your coaches about what you need, and just simple communication about. And this is something I encourage with my kids. I tell them, like, if you're at this level of swimming and you want to go to the next level, a big part of that is just communicating to the coaches about what you need. And so, like, one of the conversations that you and I have had is, hey, how is the week built? Can you tell me how the week's built? What's
Mhm.
inside your head as the coach? Because I'll understand it as a coach too. And how can I
Mhm.
maybe switch some things around? And
Mm.
I do encourage my athletes to do the same thing, right? Like, just
Right.
talk to me about what you need.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a whole part there about becoming an athlete the way we think about inside nutrition, which is it's about understanding what you're doing just as much as doing the thing that you're doing, right? Like there,
Hmm.
that communication piece is actually the gift, like it's not hard. I could get you to swim 10,000 yards. I can do it with like a bunch of cookies at the other end of the pool. I could do it with like a high, like some sort of punishment, like in a radio dangling over the pool plugged into the wall.
Yeah.
and giving people the opportunity to process intellectually what it is they're doing physically, having that overlap is phenomenal. Because that's where, for me, I see the real, not just the learning go for them, but as you know, with teams and sort of micro communities, once you teach one person, other people see an athlete learn, and they're like, oh, change is possible, and they can
Yeah.
talk to you, but now they can also talk to Ricky, or they can talk to Jane and be like, hey, how did you do it? Everyone's kind of got a little spin on it, but together creates that performance you want.
Yeah. And a lot of it for me has been going back to our original conversation when I started with the team 3 years ago, was like, what's the evolution of being on the team? And I think a big part of it is your engagement in the team, right? Like I've been on other triathlon teams in the past, and obviously swim teams in the past, and other sports, but it's different because I don't always have my training partners, like my team training partners with me, but I have to find them in other ways. However, I have found, and this is a conversation that you and I have had recently, is just engaging in the conversation, right? Just like put something out there about what you're doing or how you're fixing a problem. And that kind of allows other people to learn and feed off of that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not even about, you don't need people like, oh, why would I talk? I don't have an answer. I don't know. I didn't get to the mountaintop. That's not it. It's the process. That's where things really happen, when you're wrestling with ideas. Like, one of my favorite things to do when I was in college was, like, we had all these shared workspaces where you could go in, and back then it was really just a lot of whiteboards. There wasn't so much technology, but you'd walk into a space where someone hadn't cleaned up their old whiteboard, and people are like, oh, let's erase that. I'm like, hold on a second. Like, I want to see if I could see the magic, like what was happening here, what was going on. And to me, that's what we're all kind of doing as athletes inside our heads.
Yeah. And I do the same thing as a teacher, right? I teach exactly the same way. I'm always, and the kids are kind of like looking at me when I teach. I think they're kind of a little mystified the first couple of weeks, but like, I teach biology and advanced placement biology, and I draw everything. I draw all the processes physiologically, cellularly, and molecularly. And they're like, instead of just giving them notes, right? And I'm like, this is the way my process is. I want them to see how I process the information. It may not be the way that they process it, but I'm showing them a different way. Or if they have a way of processing it, I actually have them demo that for me in class as well.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Well, let's use this process conversation as a bit of a wedge. We started off sort of saying, hey, we want to talk about swimmers and sort of like the different types of swimmers. And then sort of from that point, be able to tell people like, hey, what's, good ROI in terms of training. And then even more importantly, some good swim toys, maybe that could help you kind of speed along. How does that sound?
Yeah, perfect. Sounds great.
Awesome. So how do you think about it from a coach? Like, obviously you've got athletes who swim multiple disciplines and distances and so on, but for us, triathlon, thinking short course, long course, how do you sort of break people into different buckets?
Yeah. So since we're specifically thinking about the triathlon team, and I even do this within my swim teams, is the test set, right? Like, we do a test swim in triathlon. We'll do a test set in swimming. And really what I'm looking for is, like, what's your range, right? Like, what is your pacing, and what can you hold either during a test set or a timed swim? And those old, like, T3000 swims, people are like, oh my God, those were horrible, right? Like, back in the day. But I'm like, they actually had quite a bit of purpose to them. They seemed tedious, and now we've changed them quite a bit in the swimming world. But, that's why I even, one of the things that I helped you with was, how do we look at the timed swim for triathletes, right? So originally it was always do 1,000 or a mile, see what your time is, and then build your training ranges based on that. The one that we built together was one where you do 100 all out, which is similar to a race start, take a minute rest, and then try to swim a 500 at max pace, right? And the reason I thought that was a good idea was because that really simulates the race, right? Like, what can you hold after getting yourself into that kind of anaerobic zone, and then kind of going from there, right?
Right.
So how do I space them out? So I would say, if you're a swimmer who is like in that 140, 150 up to 2-minute range per 100, I would say that your biggest return on investment is going to be technique, right? Spend time with the drills. The biggest thing is learning how your body, number one, floats, breath control, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And although turns are not important for triathletes, just learning how to streamline off the wall, like good body position. That's a really important thing. Although we don't think of it that way, having a long, stretched out body line is important for going fast. The longer you are, the faster you go. This is why you see like the super yachts, right? Like in the World Cup, racing boats are long and narrow and deep. And that's just the physics of it, right? Through water. Water gets denser the further you go down. So you want to be narrow and not in the horizontal plane, right? So you want to kind of get out of that horizontal plane. So the other biggest thing is when they're those individuals in that range, in that kind of first tier range of, I just need to work on technique, is really thinking about high elbow catch, right? And what a high elbow catch means, I think sometimes there's a big misinterpretation. So since we're on video as well, I'll talk about it and I'll demo it as well. A high elbow catch comes from the shoulder, right? And the body rotates. You don't want to reach in front of the face because you're going to end up turning the elbow down. You don't want to go out and keep the elbow up super high because that's real awkward and hard on the shoulder. That's really hard on the shoulder. What you really want to achieve is this. You want to reach forward. Think about your hand pitching down, your elbow staying high, but the elbow always wants to stay in front of the line that connects between your shoulder and your wrist, right? So that's actually a high elbow catch. So that if you were to draw a line from your wrist to your shoulder, is your elbow staying slightly above that the whole time? And if you can do that, right, the longer you can hold that, it is you're going to build more muscular endurance. So one thing that I've started with my swimmers is, so once you've got that technique down, then those types of swimmers, I would say this for all levels of swimmers, is start your season off with some fast short swims. And these are built into some of those workouts that you have in Endurance Nation and in like some of the workouts that I've written is, you know, like 20, 30, 40, 25s, like 3 fast, 1 easy, 3 fast, 1 easy. Keep repeating. Can you maintain that for a 25, that technique? Okay. Then in 3 or 4 weeks, can you maintain it for a 50?
Right.
Can you swim the same speed over the 50? Then can you build more muscular endurance and do it over 75? Then can you build it over 100? And if you can do repeat hundreds, I think those individuals will see the biggest rate of return. Like, how long can I hold my form over that speed, right? And without breaking down. And my biggest advice to that first level of swimmer is, one, don't fight the water. The water punches harder than you do. And it's really important, right? Like, it's important to relax and put power to the water without beating it up.
Totally. Yeah, I try to think about that. I tell people, like, in the water, like if you're standing in the shallow end and you want to create a big wave, you know, maybe you put both hands on one side, but you'd kind of start off slow and then you'd kind of build it and then really finish strong. If you just like stood outside the water and just slapped it as hard as you could, that's going to hurt like a son of a gun. But also it's just, sure, you sprayed a little bit of water and went far, but you didn't actually move anything. There's a way of interacting, you know.
So I guess like we were going to mix in some swim toys. So let me just quickly talk about and then while I move through and I brought my swim toys with me. My head coach, who I coach with, is actually on my club team. He's an old guy, and he hates that we all use swim toys. However, we use these quite a bit, and I'll make some recommendations at the end too. So number one is this boy right here. This is the unicorn snorkel, right? The unicorn snorkel, or the swim snorkel it's called, and you can buy any brand you want. I have an Arena one here. The one you really want is one with a purge valve on the bottom. So if anybody's been snorkeling or scuba diving, it's the one with the little valve on the bottom. The reason you want this one is because you can evacuate the water both out the top and the bottom when you exhale. So how we use this and how I would have a beginning triathlete or a level 1 swimmer kind of use this is really to watch their hands. And the thing I want them to watch is, am I pitching my hands down? Am I high elbow catching? And am I not crossing my center line? That's the use of the snorkel. So that's a big one. The second thing that they might want to do is do some sculling. And sculling is basically putting pressure on the palms, slightly pitched down. And there's basically 3 levels of sculling. There's high skull on the top of the water, medium skull about 45 degrees down. And then there's a low skull, which is where your hands are underneath the body a little bit, going in and out. And you're really focusing on what does the water feel like? And I want to keep pressure on the hands going in and out. And it's not fast. It's just literally in and out, nice and easy. And this allows for you to get a good feel for the water. All right. So second level swimmer, and we can maybe talk about this a little bit, is I would say these would be swimmers that would be maybe in that like 130 to 140 range, maybe, maybe 130 to 150 range. Not, they're kind of coming down. So that type of tier swimmer really needs to determine, is it my technique or do I just not swim enough?
Right.
Right. Like,
yeah.
What is it? And I think, one thing that we've talked about in Endurance Nation is, there's time and place for certain things. If you've got only 2 days to dedicate to swimming a week, then spend at least one at the pool if you could get there. And if you can't get there on the second day, if you got a Vaza or an erg, I am a swim guy. I have access to all kinds of pools. I, in my pain cave, have an erg. And I use it at home. Like this morning, I couldn't get to the pool. I had to be at school at 8 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do, I did 15 100s all out on 2 minutes on the erg. And all I did was focus on high elbow catch, maintaining good form on the erg. I did 50 meters at butterfly, 50 meters freestyle, and took about a 40-second rest in between. And that type of toy, that type of swim toy, is a training tool as well, because it at least allows you to build some muscular endurance for the sport as well. I would say for those people that are in that middle range for swimming, for triathlon, I would say that they would benefit definitely from pairing with a swim coach, maybe getting a couple of lessons, getting videotaped. They would definitely, there's 1 or 2 things wrong that could probably be fixed for them technique wise. And then 2, just putting a little bit more time with their sets, right? I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
All right. So last tier are swimmers that are kind of, I would say, more maybe like our range, right? For Ironman, we both are around, I don't know what you are for Ironman. I'm like hour to hour and 5, something like that. Under an hour, probably like under an hour and 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So if you're like 110 or less, you're definitely like a decent to good swimmer, right? You've got decent feel for the water. I know for me as a swimmer, I was a breaststroker and IRMer. So like I was a terrible freestyler. But I have to teach quality freestyle, and I've become a better freestyler as I've gotten older. And I'm a distance swimmer, right? So I'm better at the distance than I am the short stuff. And I would say for me, my biggest rate on return is that build that we talked about before. Like, how do I split my 2 days? So if I'm in that last tier of swimming, or maybe on the border of that second tier to last tier, I'm going to spend one of my days with my swim toys, a lot of toy time. So a sample would be, I'm going to swim a 600 to warm up. So my 600 warm up, or whatever the warm up is, I'm going to use my fins and my snorkel. I'm going to take pressure off my arms, and I'm going to swim as long and as beautifully as I can. And that's all I'm going to think about. Long, beautiful strokes, setting myself up. And then I'm going to roll into the preset and the regular set. And typically this is like a muscle endurance day. We're swimming some 200s, some 300s, some hundreds repeating, maybe some 150s. And I can change up equipment as I want to in that set. My second day, if I'm in that gap between the second tier and the last tier, is I would spend some time doing some speed work. Right. Just like we do in running, right? Like, even if I'm going to run, my big race for the year is an Ironman. It doesn't mean I don't want to not do some speed work, right? Because I want some leg quickness. I want to be able to change gears a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So swimming, I think, is like that too. I think if I can do those 25 sets or some fast 50s,
Mm-hmm.
and the one thing that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast was really like our own learning, right? And I've been listening to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the pros on their podcasts, and
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that a lot of them talk about is they basically have 5 swims a week, most of them.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
that's a lot of volume for an age grouper. And if you're willing to commit to 5 days a week, then that's a lot of swimming.
Right. Yeah.
If that's your thing, cool. But like for
Mm-hmm.
me, in the summer, when I'm in the heat of the season, I might go out to 3 swims a week. So my 3 swims a
Okay.
week would be an endurance day, long repeats, maybe a 150s, 100s, 75s kind of day, where I'm working on like aerobic threshold. And then my last day is a speed day, like 25s, 50s, like something really hard and fast, but lots of rest, but I'm maintaining good form. And
Right.
doing those speed intervals, those short speed intervals, will build muscle memory for those athletes, and it will build muscle strength for them, specific in muscle strength for swimming. So that way, when they do go long, the longer swims, like their 200 and 300 and 400 repeats, will feel a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to touch on that quickly because I think sometimes people feel like the high intensity swims are like, I'm trying to learn. And also, whether it's learning at the beginning phase or learning like, hey, I want to break through. And they're also like, man, that's, I'm not peaking yet. So why would I do these hard swims? And I have 2 answers to that. One is you just need to try different things when you're swimming, not just the toy style, like you said, but the different speeds, because people have, just like we have different running cadences.
Yeah.
Some people have different swim cadences, different breathing cadences, and you just don't know until you try. And you won't really appreciate it until you do a lot of it. I think one of the values of swimming a lot, we do a swim camp. We do our winter training and endurance station, then we have 2 weeks of swim camp. There's a lot of swimming in those 2 weeks because that's an opportunity for people to sort of pick up a new skill or identify something yesterday, and the next day be like, oh, I did it again, and it's better. And that condensed process is important. So the variety matters, like you're talking about. The second piece is swimming is just not that costly. When you and I listen to a lot of the same podcasts, you talk to these elite athletes, they swim the race distance every day, and they'll do it almost every day of the week. As you don't run a marathon every day if you're training for an Ironman. And so, but you can do it in the swim. There's such a low cost to it. So while the RPE for like adult onset swimmers like me, the RPE for a swim workout is off the charts. Like I finished a swim workout for 45 minutes and I'm like, where's the pizza? I need to eat everything because I'm shelled, but I'm really not. Like it's a total body session, but it's not like going out and doing a hard workout on your body. So that the variety actually is really helpful.
Yeah, the variety is helpful, and the recovery is so much easier, right? Like I can go super intense with my teams, and people don't get like, how are you swimming race pace every other day? I'm like, well, that's because there is a switch between a zone 1, zone 2 day where we're doing some technique and some zone 1, zone 2 swimming, but then like we'll also, we're going to swim race pace 3-4 times a week, and it's doable and you can do it. And for me personally, like those speed sessions really are that relationship between cadence and your actual velocity, right? Like that's an important thing. Now, if you grew up as an age group swimmer, age group swimmers and even like age group runners, they have a really good feel for what that is, right? Like it's just a thing in their neuromuscular that they can switch off between. Me, I'm kind of the same way with running, right? It's taken me a while to learn it with running.
Right.
But like you and I have talked about this, like I've mainly been doing halves and Ironmans and with Endurance Nation, but all of a sudden you've seen like some of my sprint results and you're like, wait a second, you run actually really fast. I'm like, yeah, I can run really fast. And a lot of that is just learning like the different cadences and even the different stride and gaits, right? Like for running, like how to do that. So like, yeah, my Ironman marathon is not great, but I can still run a sub 20-minute 5K off the bike, right? Like that's a doable thing for me. And my issue has been what's in the in-between space. That's what really, and that's why I sought you out and the team out, was I really want to master that like half marathon speed off the bike, right? That's my own personal goal as an athlete is I know I have speed. How do I get it to a slightly longer distance, right? And swimming's the same way, right? Can you can you maintain that speed over a longer and longer period of time? And
Mm-hmm.
knowing how to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And what are the cues in your head, right? And so I would say for all levels of swimmers,
Mm-hmm.
have a few cues. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
know you're like, I'm getting really tired. You're like, even for me in the middle of an Ironman, I'm like, I'm getting out for Florida, coming around the buoy, and I'm
Right.
like, oh my God, I got another lap. And the whole
Mm-hmm.
field's in front of me, right? And I'm like, this is
Mm-hmm.
really hard. And I grew up
Mm-hmm.
swimming, and I'm still like, man, this sucks.
Right.
However, I have 3 cues in my head: head position,
Right.
body line, catch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just
Yes.
thinking about those things repetitively, right? Like over and over and over again to maintain my form as I go through the swim.
Oh, I love that. I want to click on that because I think a lot of times when we don't know what we're doing, we really get into it. We want to make it super complex. We're like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, I'm like learning how to swim and like the toys, the water, the people,
Yeah.
the technique. I read 4 books. I watched 17 videos. Like, what do I do? And when you go to the elite side of the equation, you're like, okay, so here's this guy, he coaches all these swimmers. He's a great swimmer himself, a hardworking triathlete, not just your average, like, you know, fancy guy talking about stuff, doesn't actually do it, right? Okay, great. What does he do? He's got 3 bullets. That's it. He's
Mm-hmm.
got 3 bullets. Like, and so I really think that when we need to sort of change the way those of you who are listening think about your swimming side, is like, okay, what are the things that I'm working on? Like not just like this week or this month, but like today. And it has to be able to fit. Like you have to be able to like write it on your hand, like your kid. Like, you know, I guess
Yep.
kids don't cheat this way in school anymore. But back in the day, you could fit a couple answers here, right? Like put
Yep.
the answers. If it doesn't fit here, then it's not going to work because you have to be breathing, you know, watching other people around you, checking the clock, all of those pieces of the puzzle. And if you don't
Yes.
have those key cues, A, and then B, the other part of that, what you're practicing there, I think, is the race side of things. Because on race day, it's kind of you go back from a engagement perspective to those
Mm-hmm.
first days of swimming where you kind of forget everything. When the gun goes off, most swimmers forget it all, you know,
Yeah.
and those having those cues that you've been practicing and drilling into your head and know that result in better swim form for you, you can pull out that card on race day like it's a game changer for you. You
Yeah,
know?
and I think about those in the corral too, right? Like when I'm
Oh yeah.
racing, even when I'm personally racing, I'm thinking about, okay, swim, bike, and run.
Mm-hmm.
What's my 3 cues, right? So the swim might be just control the breathing, don't
Mm-hmm.
go lactate. Okay, now
Mm-hmm.
when I get tired, here's my 3 things, whatever they may be,
Mm-hmm.
right? For you that you know you
Mm-hmm.
need to work on. The bike, for me personally, like my personal bike is like stay aero, get off the
Mm-hmm.
horns. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Increase your cadence,
Mm-hmm.
drink,
Mm-hmm.
and keep
Right.
drinking, cadence, drink, right? Like that's
Right.
always been my biggest downfall is, oh yeah, I took 8 bottles. And everybody's
Right.
like, what? You should have taken like 12 or 13. What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
just having those like really super basic cues and then
Mm-hmm.
running. Recently I've been listening to that Triathlon Life and even like Eric
Yeah.
Lagerstrom, who is, one of the top half distance guys in the world. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
I run with a mirror in front of the treadmill. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds horrible. And then I'm like, no, it's
Right.
not. You're a swimmer. You stayed at a black line the whole time, right? Like
right.
you've done this all your life. You've swam on a pool with mirrors on the bottom of a pool. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually, we have a little mirror that my wife hates it because she's a runner too, but like we have a mirror in the garage with our pain cave and it's like, I'll set it in front of the treadmill when I'm running and I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. But
Mm-hmm.
I actually have that visualization in my head when I'm on the run, right? Like posture.
Mm-hmm.
What should my hips feel like? What should my hands feel like? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
3 very simple cues for that sport that I know will maybe not make me faster, because not in an Ironman, we're not talking about getting faster. We're just literally talking about economy, right? Like my economy of speed for a half and an Ironman is really key. Like in the sprint distance, it's, in Olympic distance, it's really, how long can you sprint for? And that's what those distance races are all about. Like, can you maintain a sprint speed over a really long period of time? Whereas the half and the Ironman is, how do I not allow my form to break down, right? Like, I'm really just worried about economy and efficiency. And that will eventually make me go faster, right? Like, my Ironman times have gotten faster since 2010, and I'm now 13 years older. You know, I'm going to be 47 this year, and I'm still faster.
Right.
And I don't think it's because I'm actually faster. I think I'm just more economical with my body and my sports.
Right. Well, the clock doesn't lie, too. I mean, it's all about that, right? It's all about the economy. I think that's a great way to sort of focus on this, too, which is it is all about economy. And we're talking, economy right now in terms of time. But I think earlier we were also emphasizing a little bit about sort of like using these toys. They're an economy for learning, right? So how do I accelerate my learning process?
Yep.
If I do strokes with the snorkel versus non-strokes, the strokes with snorkel speed up my adaptation, speed up my learning. So it's not about like, do I become like, I put this on, am I faster right now? Like if you want that, like go get the shoes with the carbon plates and then run with them. Like yes, you are faster now, but there's a process between the two that's about becoming sustainably fast, which is it's not about the shoes, right? It's about the engine. It's about how we operate. And for me, I think swimming is the last bit I want to touch on too, is just, I think a lot of times athletes forget about learning in endurance sports because they just do it. I'm going for a run. I'm going for a bike. I'm just checking a box. I'm doing a thing. But when we're swimming, especially as adult onset swimmers, we have to, if you're not in a learning mode, if you have a garbage swim workout, it was literally garbage. There's no good, bad swim workouts. Like you just mailed that thing and you just got wet and tired. You know what I mean? And so I think it really, when I get into swim mode, it opens up all of my learning across all the sports again. I move out of that sort of metronome space into the like, how am I moving my knees? Like what's different now versus different before? I think it's just so critical.
Yeah, I would say like for the athletes, especially within the community, is because I get a lot of questions in the community about like, what should I be faster? Should I be slower with certain types of equipment? So I guess maybe the last thing I'll do is just basically talk about like, what do I do personally? And maybe what do I have my kids do? And even triathletes that I coach do with the equipment, and what's the purpose of it, right? So again, so first up is the snorkel, right? The snorkel is really meant for body position and for watching your hands. That's what it's for. Okay, so getting your head down, getting good body position, being horizontal in the water, and rotating on the axis for the freestyle. So that's what I use the snorkel for. It's great. I use it every day for warm up personally, and my kids do too. Second would be fins. So what do I use fins for? I have a specific type of fin here. I have two types that I recommend for triathletes because I get this question like, well, why do you swim with fins? Okay, well, I have two different types of fins. I have this one. This is a foam fin. This is used to be made by Aquasphere. Now it's just like the Michael Phelps. I don't even know if you can get these anymore. But these are like a foam, like EVA foam. Okay. So they float. So instead of wearing like the neoprene like swim shorts to simulate your wetsuit, you can just wear these, get a longer body line, and this simulates kind of the float of the wetsuit a little bit with the hips and the legs. Oh, okay. Right. So that can do that, right? And that just allows that. I'm not really kicking a whole lot with these on. I'm just getting a little bit of float and a little bit of different body position that I would have with the wetsuit on. Now, the other type of fin, which I highly recommend, I use this with my swimmers. This is the brand is called DMC. I'm not sponsored by them. Our team isn't. We're actually sponsored by Arena, our team. But a lot of my kids have switched to this fin. This is the triathlon specific fin, and I use this. It's very big, as you can see. For those that are not watching, the thing is literally the size of my face, right? It's huge. Yeah. However, this fin is, if you watch, and I'll tell you about it, it's very pliable. So for those that are not childhood swimmers, right? This is fantastic because the number one problem that most triathletes have is their ankles are rigid. They're having flexibility problems. And we talked about this in our kind of coaches athlete office hours a couple of weeks ago. Was my ankles hurt, right, when I use fins. So they've made a very specific fin. DMC is the name of the brand, and they actually ship very quickly. I ordered these like on a Monday. They got to me by Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. So this fin is great. It's flexible. Again, gives you a little bit of length. It gives you better propulsion, but it also allows your ankle to slowly get more flexible over time instead of just cranking on the Arena fins, the Speedo ones that are the short bladed ones. Those are great. Problem is you got to be a swimmer with real floppy ankles to wear those, with the rigid fins. Third type of equipment is the paddles. What do I suggest? You can get different sizes. I use a Tier Catalyst paddle. This paddle is beautiful. I've used this since college, actually. So for over 30 years. This paddle is, the way it works is that when you enter, it's meant to have the longest fingers enter first. If you enter any other way with this paddle, your hand will pitch in the wrong direction, right? So you actually are forced. So you shouldn't be wearing paddles to increase your speed. You should be wearing paddles to fix technique and to build more strength. That's the whole purpose of the paddles. I think sometimes triathletes use them because they're like, oh, I can go really fast with paddles. You really want to use paddles carefully, especially if you're not an age group swimmer, right? Or a master swimmer, because you can tear up your shoulders a little bit, but you want to use technique and length and setting your hands properly into the water. That's what you really want to use them for. And then the last piece is the lovely buoy, right? There's all different types. And I get this question all the time in the community is, do you swim fast or slower with the buoy? I'm like, I don't really use a buoy for that purpose, right? Because in the end, yes, I'm going to have a wetsuit on, but I use the buoy maybe when I'm pulling to focus on my arms. Do I use the buoy ever when I'm just swimming? Not really. And the reason I don't is because I don't want my legs dragging. If my legs are dragging, that means my head's out of position and my chest is out of position. I think, unfortunately, this is something that gets abused by swimmers. I know Paul and Eric have talked about this in their podcast too, right?
Right. Yeah.
The abuse of the buoy just because my legs aren't sinking anymore, right? If you're using this because you get faster, the reason you're getting faster is because your head is down and your chest is down. So that's a technique thing that you have to fix before you go to the buoy too often.
I always tell people to swim like with a, without a buoy 100, steady, and then with a buoy steady. And if you're like miraculously 10 or 15 seconds faster, we know exactly what your problem is. Like your body position is shot.
And this is what I would tell people, whether it's, workouts you're doing in mine or Coach Patrick's, is if you have like a repeating number of repeats in there and you want to group them by 3 or 4, like a little bit of equipment here, no equipment here, a little bit of a different equipment, no equipment. Practicing the equipment on and off like that in maybe a few repeats together really tells you what your problem is. You can, if you're paying attention, you can figure out, like, is it my body position? Is it my catch? Is it my head position? Am I not kicking, right? Am I not rotating side to side? Like, what is it that I'm not doing with the equipment off that I can do with the equipment on? And so my biggest encouragement with the equipment for everybody, since this was kind of our last piece to talk about, was really focus on what you do well with the equipment on, and how can I mimic that with the equipment off?
Right. Yeah. 100%. Like it's like it's the feedback loop. It's like, watching, like driving down the road and having your hand outside the window, right? And being like fingers up, like pushing the hand back, fingers forward, hands just fine. And just kind of developing that sensibility for how you're engaging with the water, and then using these tools, to sort of accelerate it. Well, this has been like, I think, a good primer for those of the folks on the team who are, getting into swimming this year and trying to figure it out. Like, we have obviously a lot of written resources. Greg is a living compendium of swim resources for everyone inside the team. I appreciate you coming on to share.
Yeah, thank you. I encourage everybody, tag, if you really literally, and I say this all the time in the Geneva app, but because we can't load videos in there, what I would recommend everybody is in the swim community page on the website. I think you can drop a video in there. You can drop a video in there and just make sure you tag me in there so that I get an email. And if I see that tag message from you as an athlete in the team, I'm happy to look at your video, even if it's just a head-on video or a tail-on video or a side video of you swimming, just 2 or 3, 4 lengths of your stroke. I can definitely give you a quick feedback. And what you'll also see is that other team members will jump in and like give you some critical feedback. But definitely tag me in your video, and I'm happy to give some free swim advice.
That's awesome. That'd be fantastic. Like, I think, again, just getting that other perspective. I always tell people swimming is like doing yoga in the dark. The instructor is like,
Yeah.
everyone downward dog. And then we turn the lights on and like one person is against the wall. Another person's in like a happy baby pose. Someone's doing the warrior. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's all of us when we're swimming. And so just developing that fluency, even watching someone else swim and having a conversation about that makes you a better swimmer, because we're just triggering those pathways in your brain about what we're thinking about when we're in the water. So
For sure.
awesome.
For sure.
Excellent. Hey, this has been fantastic, Greg. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Coach Patrick. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Now rest up. There's gonna be a lot of shoveling this weekend for
yes, of course.
Yes, you could probably use those
yeah.
fins to kind of move along.
I think there's a few team members who will tell me what my TSS will be for that.
I bet you will. Turn on Strava for sure. All right,
there
man.
we go.
Be well.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Peace out.
See ya. Bye.